Okay, we are back. Let's see if we can get Stu back on the line. Stu, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Glenn. God, I was wondering what was happening here. All the commercials. They knock you off the program or what?
Yeah, well, you couldn't hear me, so I figured might as well, get everything fresh again. So it seemed to clear it up, so that's good.
Okay.
You want to go ahead and start off, Stu, and introduce our special guest?
I'd like to have the honor to introduce as a guest here with me tonight, Gordon Duff of Veterans Today, and with that, I'm going to let Gordon give a little bit of introduction on his own background. How's that, Gordon?
Oh, gosh, how does one introduce themselves? Let's see. I work primarily as a defense contractor. I work in intelligence, aerospace, and surveillance. I have been for a long time. I sit on the board of one oil company and a couple of international banks, and 40-some years ago, I was a Marine serving in Vietnam, combat infantryman. I'm a disabled vet. Veterans Today is the largest independent news site in the world, with 680,000 subscribers, and no real political litmus to it. We are a free and open site to anyone that has the qualifications to write there. And a lot of the people I don't necessarily agree with, but they've paid their dues and they get to say what they say. And it's a forum that's taught me an awful lot. Listening to people I don't necessarily agree with. It's been a good experience. I'm going to stop with that before I say anything really bad.
Gordon, I think you're under the assumption that I am, that a lot of Americans don't have any idea that it's the truth of what is really going on in this country politically, are they?
Well, one of the things here is that I only have one friend that qualifies as being a Christian evangelist, and that's Mark Siljander. Mark and I worked together for years. We both worked for the United Nations. I'm a former UN ambassador. Mark was, under the Reagan administration, was ambassador to the United Nations, a former three-term congressman. And Mark was one of my closest friends, very active in the Christian Zionist community, the Christian evangelist community, speaks Arabic, Hebrew. Currently, Mark's in a federal prison. Mark's in a federal prison because he stood up to the Bush family. We're hoping Mark will get out soon, but he's the kindest, most gentle, honest human being I've known, and he's doing time. I think that's kind of where we are in this country, and if you're busy watching TV and listening to what they tell you and you believe what you're supposed to believe, maybe you'll be in a cell too, or maybe they'll just put a bullet in the back of your head. If you don't think that can happen, hey, just wait.
Just wait, right. Like if you don't believe they're going to come along and sideswipe you and knock you and flip you on a concrete barrier like they did me, just wait. Now, Gordon, you've investigated a lot of things over the years. You've come to realize a lot of things because of your intelligence background. And
you and I talked earlier today, and my background is, I'm retired from an intelligence agency. There's little secret about that. Although I'm not one of the people who I think paints it on the side of a barn like others do. But I work as an intelligence analyst. I work directly with the heads of state of a number of countries. I certainly know at least a dozen major chiefs of intelligence agencies. 5 are on staff at Veterans Today. That's who we are. We're the publication. Actually, we're the publication for it's a back channel for intelligence agency people, except that since everyone wants to get involved, that's kind of where we took on the size of it. One of the things after talking to you, I called a senior retired member of the FBI who is still working for them on a consulting basis in the areas involving counterterrorism, counterintelligence, and money laundering. And we had a lengthy discussion about what files existed on some of the people that you've had dealings with. And my own experience is while working for a multinational bank and representing the world fertilizer industry, which is primarily out of Russia, on a multi-billion-dollar transaction, I had found myself in business with Leonard Millman, Larry Mizell, Key Corp, and some of the people that you've crossed.
My ex-in-law, Leonard Millman, right.
Yeah, and these people had not been on my radar until I was confronted with what I considered behavior that was beyond the norm, enough to drive us into federal court, meaning there are limitations based on a settlement of what I can indicate. But I had found that Key Corp, Millman, and Mizell were essentially at the root of America's organized crime, that they had infiltrated the FBI, were close to foreign spy agencies, and during the 80s had been directly affiliated with groups that were known to be enemies of the United States and involved in the deaths of many CIA agents, involved with groups that were tied to the transfer of key defense technologies to the then Soviet Union. And they have since been involved with worldwide narcotics, money laundering, and human trafficking. And at the same time have lived lives of relative ease and respect. It's almost as though Al Capone were giving dinner parties on the White House lawn. One of the things that makes me wonder about this, because it didn't take we don't all see everything like this, and they aren't certainly the only bad guys. We just went through an election here. One of the ways I knew Romney's father. Now we can talk about this. I didn't know about Romney until the FBI came to me about Romney and let me read his file. I didn't know that Romney had a Cuban mistress whose father is former head of the KGB, former Russian premier, Maria Perez Andropov. I was shown a photograph of the two getting off a plane hand in hand in Miami. I saw and published letters from the Cuban Defense Ministry, from Raul Castro, to Willard, spelled with a T, by the way, Willard Mitt Romney, our amigo of Norte Americano, our North American friend, promising they were going to aid him. We have tape recordings of Romney discussing money laundering, human trafficking into the U.S. We have there's video of Romney having sex with his mistress in at a Cuban resort. We've tracked him into numerous visits to Cuba. And in the process, we had found that Romney, over years, as early as 1984, and before that, it was his father, which I'd never known. One of the things, Stu, that I think is important, if everything you learn confirms things you thought you knew, you're being played. That's, one of probably 1,000 lessons on, like Gibbs and NCIS, where he's got his rules. Well, there are 1,000 lessons you learn working in intelligence, and you learn by being humiliated, making mistakes, being had, believing lies. That's how you learn. Nobody teaches you to be really smart. One of the issues here is the only way you can survive to get smart if you've got the basic talent for it, is luck. I think you know that. You yourself, you would have been gone long ago. No one has stepped in front of the train, Stu, as much as you have.
Yeah, I've stepped in front of it a few times.
One of the things I came on years ago when I began looking into an organized crime group that was probably one of the largest, most vicious, powerful, and dangerous to the United States. One of the things I came on was you, and how you were simply out there exposing them. And, of course, the attacks that you were being subjected to. But there was no one whatsoever on this earth saying anything about these people but you. Without you, there would have been nothing. And I went through some of this with the FBI today, that even to this day, the international criminal groups that the individuals that you've exposed are partnering with still have full coverage. Their files are classified. Anything they do, any criminal act they do, is covered by issues of national security. They handle billions of dollars a week of narcotics money out of Afghanistan. They launder this money through Zurich. They launder it through Tel Aviv. They operate out of Cuba, and that's something that I know you were unaware of, but something I've been able to find, where they're given safe haven, because so many people who are anti-imperialist, so many people look on Castro as a bastion of world freedom because he stands up to the bad U.S. government. And a lot of people think that way. A lot of people that see themselves as liberals, or a lot of people who don't like what the United States does. And they don't realize that it's not just that Castro sits there and isn't who we think, that Cuba's relationship with organized crime is the same as it was during Batista's rule. And that Cuba has been tied with certainly Russia. They're still tied with Russia. And Russia, despite the fact that Vladimir Putin is is a person of some independence and noted personal courage, and certainly a very respected leader. But Russia has a vast organized crime network, and that organized crime network has always operated in a hub with the Israeli government. Now, and that many times to a much lesser degree, but under the Likud regime of Netanyahu. Netanyahu is hardly a U.S. ally. He's just another member of organized crime, and the group you're dealing with, who represent themselves as the Israeli lobby, they have nothing to do with the Jewish people. It's simply a front for the mob.
AIPAC.
That's all.
AIPAC.
AIPAC is organized crime. AIPAC is an espionage organization to the extent that, for anybody out there who'd want to look up Gwyneth Todd, Gwyneth Todd is an editor at Veterans Today. Gwyneth Todd was on the National Security Council under Clinton, was brought over to the White House by Paul Wolfowitz, worked for Condoleezza Rice, and with permission of what was then National Security Council Chief Rice, before she took over as Secretary of State, Gwyneth Todd worked with the FBI on an investigation of espionage within the White House, and wore a wire in meetings with members of AIPAC who were under investigation for espionage, and among those was Steve Rosen. Now, Steve was a good friend of Gwyneth's, one of the people who ran AIPAC. At last check, Steve had a $20 million lawsuit against AIPAC, who fired him for spying. And his response to this was to sue them, saying, "This is essentially his case. How can I be fired from a spy agency for spying?" Now,
Interesting.
Gwyneth Todd, in 2007, had caused enough trouble that she had been moved to a contracting position where she was contracted to the U.S. State Department as Chief Political Officer of the American Fifth Fleet out of Bahrain. While serving there in 2007, this is just an interesting sideline, she was called into the office of Admiral Cosgriff, where he was there. She was there with Admiral Cosgriff and Intelligence Chief for the fleet, and now Naval Intelligence Director, Commander Lin Chow. From there, she was sent out, though a civilian contractor, was sent out to meet with an informant to learn about a potential terrorist act against American troops. She left the base and then headed to the meeting, found the person she was meeting. She recognized him as being someone on the terror list, turned around and headed back to the base and found that her security clearances and access had been blocked. Well, she managed to talk her way back in and managed to escape to Australia. What she had learned is that before she was sent on that assignment, she had been already fired, and she was being sent to be assassinated by a U.S. admiral had arranged for her murder. A person who now works for Textron Corporation, a major U.S. defense contractor. Lin Chow is still in the Pentagon. Now, this is a wild story with one exception. All of this was in the Washington Post in an article written by Jeff Stein. 5 pages in the Washington Post magazine by Jeff Stein, spy left out in the cold. Suggest you read it. And I'll tell you, Lin Chow is still in the Pentagon. And my informants tell me that she works as an espionage agent for a foreign power. We'll see if that's true. And I have good access. And no one has questioned Cosgriff, although he was accused in an article in the Sunday Washington Post magazine. He was accused of attempting to assassinate a State Department official. He's never been questioned. If that doesn't tell you what kind of country you live in, and we can go on with this, well, pretty much forever. Stu's got a good idea of what kind of list do you have, Stu?
The list is long. But you're talking about Melman and Larry Mizell, Leonard Melman, my ex-in-law in particular. He told me something I was unaware of today.
This is one of the issues here where I came on you. First of all, if you weren't involved as family, you wouldn't have found them. If it weren't for me having to do business with them and it's costing the financial institution I worked for a huge amount of money due to, well, that's what started me on the trail, because I have access to anyone within the intelligence community. And
you've been on the trail for years.
Well, I'd found that the law firms out of Cleveland representing Mizell. Now, although Mizell did business typically out of Denver, Colorado, and that's one of the key things that people who work in the areas of international espionage, counterterrorism, money laundering, human trafficking, and narcotics know that Denver, Colorado is the absolute center for a criminal network that involves the Bush family, these individuals, and others, that circles to a large extent around corporations run by the individuals that Stu has worked with, along with Bank of America. As a matter of fact, Pakistani intelligence has in their possession $2.2 billion in electronic security briefcases, an entire container of money that was picked up heading into Afghanistan. They're holding that much. All of it says, each one of the briefcases says $2 million, property of Bank of America, heading to pay off the drug lords of the Northern Alliance. Was intercepted.
Interesting. Afghanistan, the only reason we're really there, in your opinion, is what? The drugs?
When we arrived, Afghanistan was turning out between 80 and 100 tons of opium paste a year. Within 5 years of the U.S. being there, we had built a series of heroin processing facilities. The heroin processing facilities are owned by members of the United States Congress, prominent members of and they are prominent members of the Republican Party, including, two are U.S. senators. One of the senators, however, is neither a member of the Republican nor Democratic Party, but an independent, but I won't give his name, although there's only one person that is an independent in the Senate. I still won't give the name. The chemicals used for processing the $80 billion crop is being shipped into Afghanistan, along with our military supplies, and the chemicals are being shipped in the name of a member of the head of a key congressional committee who owns a series of establishments within Afghanistan, dry cleaning plants. And these dry cleaning plants, like people in Afghanistan use dry cleaning, not to disparage people there. I've been to Afghanistan and have many good friends there. And I find it quite an enjoyable place when people aren't shooting at you, which kind of cuts things down a lot since they're pretty much always shooting at somebody there and have been for about 1,500 years. But there's no attempt to hide any of this. I mean, they try to say that this is where 98% of the world's heroin comes from. It's being distributed. Now, we know in Russia picked up 300 bricks last week alone. Now, we knew those were being carried over in trucks, but the rest of it is going out in long-range aircraft. And I'm sorry, but last time we checked, the Taliban didn't have any planes. Maybe they're renting them from the CIA. I don't know. But
Daddy Bush.
They don't have planes.
From Daddy Bush. And
now, I could tell you that the CIA, that private aircraft contracted to the Central Intelligence Agency, picks up loads of heroin under the guise of rendition flights of political prisoners, flies these to Kosovo, to Camp Bondsteel, a U.S. base in the right off the border with Albania, and there the partners in the world heroin trade, the Albanian Mafia, the most powerful criminal group, the most dangerous criminal group in the world, works in partnership with rogue organizations within not just the CIA, but other groups, including and not limited to most of the former staff of President Bush, key members of his administration, and those surviving members, and this is that date back to the Reagan administration, that essentially during those administrations, and I worked for the Reagan administration, and I never had bad feelings about President Reagan, but I do have access to people that saw him. I was not at any level where I met with the President of the United States. Let me be very clear about that. Not until later, when I do know President Bush 41 reasonably well and have a good relationship with him. I'm not able to discuss why and how he would have had to deal with me. That's my red my third rail. But President Reagan had one thing to say, and I have this from his intelligence chief Lee Wanta, who you can go to the Reagan Library, pull out his Reagan's calendar, and see how often Wanta met with Reagan. It was many times. It's a calendar, by the way, where Ollie North is never on the calendar, and there's no sign that President Reagan ever met Oliver North, by the way, or so many of the other people that tried hiding behind him. But Reagan regularly told people is that no one within his inner circle is allowed to talk to George Herbert Walker Bush. That Reagan said he was forced to take this person on, didn't trust him, refused to work with him, and that no one was allowed to pass any information to him.
Why was he forced to take him on? I've heard similar.
One would have thought that rather than having a displaced New Englander or supposed Texan or whatever, would have given him the strength he needed. See, Reagan, first of all, Reagan had two victories anyway. Now, you have to remember, though, that he was in an office for 60 days before a Bush family friend put 2 bullets in him.
Right. Yeah, and Neil Bush, Hinckley's brother, was at Neil Bush's birthday party that night after they put 2 bullets in him. In Denver.
Yeah. And we could say that the Hinckley family are, and this would be quoting Webster Tarpley, but the Hinckley family is central to a group that is called the Mormon Mafia, and that the Mormon Mafia, which includes the Romney family, have a long history in Mexico. That in 1884. The Romney family was stripped of citizenship by the Edmunds Act for polygamy, fled the United States to avoid prosecution, stayed in Mexico for 26 years. That Mitt Romney's father, George Romney, re-entered the U.S., that the family never went through the required legal repatriation and loyalty oaths, which they were required, meaning that the Romney family has never reassumed American citizenship. Never. That they consider themselves citizens of, and this is for you people who love historical issues, the Kingdom of Deseret. The family had renounced its citizenship in perpetuity, had its citizenship officially stripped by law, had renounced his citizenship when it had left the United States, and no one in the family had reassumed citizenship at any time. Now, one could consider that Willard Mitt Romney may be an American citizen, depending on your definition. But if I had to choose between the proof that exists for, let's say, President Obama being born in Kenya, or that Romney, the lifelong associate of Carlos Salinas, former president of Mexico, and cartel head, by the way. That was his business partner. That's who he went to Harvard with, by the way. They met each other at Harvard, Carlos Salinas. And FBI files indicate that they have spent much time together. So one of the things that actually caused Romney to distance himself, this is according to FBI sources, from his active participation in Bain Capital, who, according to FBI sources, is sitting on $1.6 billion in drug money. Not $1.6 billion, $1.6 trillion, 1,000 billion in drug money in thousands of numbered bank accounts in the Caymans, in Switzerland, Dubai, and elsewhere. And they are central to the money laundering schemes and are frankly the bankers for the Bush cartel.
Yes.
Well, there's a Bush cartel.
Yes.
The Bush family. Stu, why don't you tell our friends here? And this is one of the things I tripped over. Tell them what Jeb Bush does for a living.
Narcotics.
Who he really is, and what he really does for a living.
He's a narcotics dealer. That's basically what it is. Hollywood Air Force Base.
How big?
Huge. It's all tied up with E-Systems at Dallas, Texas, flying the C-130s in here.
Who's his family?
Ollie North.
Yeah.
Pier 66, Miami, hauling drugs in consistently with Ollie North and his submarine company from Colombia. And who else is tied to that? We got the Oklahoma City bombing player, which was the guy that had the gun shop, has his yacht going in and out of there at Pier 66 continuously.
And
I might also add something on this Carlos Salinas, the former Mexican president. I don't know if you're aware of Norman Brownstein. I think you've got him on your scope as well, but Norman had his offices in Mexico City, Mexico, and of course they got caught laundering. Citicorp did, Millman's Bank, laundering Salinas' drug money.
And of course, Salinas' personal partner and associate, and this is the one that got under your radar, is Romney, and that the operations were done, and this is because of pressure from the when the Abrega cartel was broken up, and that was penetrated by FBI undercover agents, and Raul Salinas was sentenced to 50 years. Carlos Salinas fled and moved to Ireland, where he waited out the extradition period because he was facing prison. At that time, when Salinas' brother was sent up for 50 years, and Cuban intelligence members that defected took materials outlining Romney's activities in Cuba and delivered them to the head of Mexican intelligence, who turned them over to the FBI. And that includes photographs, films, tape recordings, documents, enough to fill a small truck. And I guess the term we'd use is the mosaic, but how you can look at the Mexican cartels, you can look at the Colombian cartels, you can look at so many people within the Reagan and Bush White House, you can look at American military operations in the early 1980s throughout Central America. Our operations certainly with Noriega in Panama, and it ties together. This one of the issues that, of course, that makes you such a bad person potentially is that there actually is an organized crime ring that dates back to Arnold Rothstein and Meyer Lansky. And Meyer Lansky, by the way, was a close friend of George Herbert Walker Bush, and essentially, ran organized crime in the U.S. at one time. He owned most of Las Vegas. If you look at Romney,
and Millman was his accountant on that hotel out there that Bugsy Siegel when he was killed.
Yep, and all you need to look at now, and someone, by the way, I don't really dislike. I actually like Sheldon Adelson. Now, Sheldon Adelson actually came out and openly stated that he supported Romney's election with endless millions of dollars because he felt that Romney would keep him from being sent to prison. Now, Adelson served in the American military, although he said that he's ashamed of his service, that he would have rather served in the Israeli military, but he's a veteran. And one thing that Romney's a physical coward. The people assigned to follow Romney, and I guarantee you the FBI has been on his trail consistently since 1999. He hasn't said a word that hasn't been recorded. He hasn't done anything that hasn't been recorded. And they were on him intermittently from 1984 to 89. And there are movies of him getting on planes to Cuba, including, by the way, traveling on a forged diplomatic passport. There are political trips that he had taken while governor of Massachusetts, where his Cuban mistress traveled with him under a false name. The FBI records indicate that. I found that rather interesting. And I was told, if anyone comes to ask you about that, Gordon, refer them to me. And that's a certain FBI official who said, I'll deal with that problem for you.
Now, not only Romney, but Romney's right in the middle of this, and he's laundering money for the cartel. Period. I mean, he's up to his eyeballs.
It's one of the things. Bain was the vehicle, primarily. What I never knew, and I never knew to what extent this group was involved in Soviet espionage. That all of these people were deeply involved. And if you were to go on
Jonathan Pollard case, isn't it?
You were to go on Wikipedia and look up Jonathan Pollard, you would learn these things. Look, this is part of the mosaic of extreme inconsistencies. That Pollard has done 26 years in prison, that the Israeli government has asked for his release hundreds of times, that members of the Senate, the most, what I say, personal disappointing individual that I have that's requested Pollard's release is former Marine Bud McFarland, who has been involved with some of the things I've done during my life, and who I had a good opinion of, that they actually got to him. Now, what did Pollard do? Now, Wikipedia will tell you that Pollard was sentenced to prison, and he's going to die in prison, by the way, for passing on the locations of 2 Palestinian terrorist training camps that the U.S. was for some reason protecting. He passed this information on to Israel. Well, if that were the actual case, he wouldn't have gotten 5 minutes in prison. Not to the extent where members of the U.S. Senate, 24 of them, where several hundred members of Congress have been told by the intelligence community that if Pollard is released, their personal safety can no longer be guaranteed. If you were to head in the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, you would find the names of 84 dead CIA agents. Now, you wouldn't find their names because their names aren't public. What you'd find are stars, no names at all. What we don't have there is we don't have the stars for the CIA agents that were killed because Jonathan Pollard sold the knock list, the non-official cover list, not to Israel. He sold it to the Soviet Union as part of an Israeli spy ring. There would be enough stars up there. 1,100 CIA agents and assets were captured, tortured, and executed because of the actions of Jonathan Pollard. Enough to take those 84 stars and to, by the time they're done engraving them, they'll go all the way to the elevator doors. Nobody would head in there. It would be like going to the Vietnam Wall. It would be that depressing. That's what he did. That's why he's in jail for 26 years, that. And passing on nuclear secrets, NATO war plans. He gave the Soviet Union everything they needed for a successful first strike against the United States. The man nearly caused a third world war that the United States would have lost. We wouldn't have to worry about doing this. We'd all be dead. That's why he's in prison for 26 years. And this is the kind of, well, and you have people in your government begging for his release that know everything I just told you. They all know it. Every member of the Senate, every member of the House, certainly Bibi Netanyahu, the former rag-picking furniture salesman from Philadelphia that runs Israel, he knows it. They all know this, and that's why he's in prison. And it wasn't just him.
Connected to Pollard is also Mizell and Millman and others, aren't they?
That's right.
Yes.
And Richard Clark. Oh, yeah. We haven't mentioned him. Richard Clark is an interesting individual that's reconstituted himself. Let me just jump in, and this is my alienate the audience moment here. We're on a Christian network, and many American Christians believe that blind obedience to movements within Israel that have nothing to do with supporting Jews anywhere in the world, but that loyalty to Israel and the eventuality that Israel is going to push the world into a third world war, that the end times, and even people within the intelligence community are actually saying the end times are here, other than the Mayan calendar thing coming up at on the 21st. But we have some more than serious issues right now. But who has made it worse are the blind Christian supporters in the U.S. that give billions of dollars to Israel, one of the richest countries in the world, where food and housing, hey, a waterfront condominium in Haifa costs $100,000. Here, similar living would cost 10 times as much. That as an American citizen, many people in Israel are getting as much as $35,000 to $40,000 a year from the American taxpayer. And we don't even want to begin discussing why the United Nations voted, the U.S. In defending the attempt to move to block Palestinian statehood. The U.S. had Canada, Czechoslovakia, the Marshall Islands, Panama, Palau, I guess, and a couple other places that I believe, since the rise of ocean level, are actually currently abandoned and underwater, but still voted. But it was the most humiliating diplomatic defeat the United States has ever had, because the American people don't have a clue what's going on. They don't understand that Israel has nothing to do with being Jewish, nothing whatsoever. That Israel was essentially established as a state, as a homeland for world organized crime.
It is a big crime syndicate today, their government over there in Israel.
The Likud government in Israel is a military dictatorship. You'll find, if you look into the politics that went on over the last 2 weeks, you'll find that Netanyahu is now, his two opponents mysteriously dropped out of the election, like they always do. They have more political assassinations in Israel than the U.S. does. But it is entirely a dictatorial state. It's an apartheid state, But you won't know any of this because you'll never hear the truth. Never. You'll never hear the truth about the '67 war. You'll never hear the truth about the USS Liberty
being blown up by Israel.
And of course, what they'll hide behind is the mob. When you get close to the mob will bring up the Holocaust and call you an anti-Semite.
like Abe Foxman, the Iran Contra money launderer. Yeah.
I have so much fun with Foxman because, see, I can prove I'm Jewish. He can't. He was raised a Roman Catholic. My mother's a Jew. I can prove I'm Jewish. Abe Foxman, the head of the ADL, which is, frankly, the ADL, the Simon Wiesenthal Center, And
where Larry Mizell and Norman Brownstein are directors, right?
Yeah. Who would think that you would take the would-be Nazi hunter from long ago and realize that the Simon Wiesenthal Center has nothing to do with Simon Wiesenthal and hasn't for decade after decade, that it's just been a front. It'd be like taking a large Vegas casino, we'll take one of and putting a cross on top of it and calling it a church.
It's all to deal with espionage.
It's all to do with espionage, world domination, and in this case, keeping the world in debt slavery. If you're wondering about history here, you want to know why things are the way they are. Those of you that are, I'm a little older than Stu here, but take the clock back to 1972. In 1972, let's say that was the time that an American could graduate from high school. If you were a parent, your children could go to college for, $12 a credit hour. Half that money would be paid by federal programs. Kids could certainly go to school without needing $60,000 a year to go to a major school. That a normal American worker, only one person in the family was required to hold a job. Mothers could stay home. You could buy a car. And I'm actually driving a car almost old enough to have free license plates because of its age. But BMWs hold up very well. You treat them nicely enough, they'll live to be a classic. But no, too many of us are either mortgaging ourselves to death to drive cars. We're working multiple jobs. We're a country full of people that are either renters or waiting for our homes to be taken, or one paycheck from starvation. There are people in this country, about 200 million of them, that are concerned that their children will grow up in poverty, never have a decent job. It isn't just here. You'll find France and Germany are the same way. I've got friends in Germany with advanced degrees working for minimum wage. I have friends in France that over the years have, frankly, they take care of their parents because the only way they will have anywhere to live is when their parents eventually die, they will no longer have to sleep on the couch. Now, what you might have had to do at 19 or 20 years old, when you're 50 years old, is not so funny. And that's what we've created. That's what you hear this talk about debt slavery and central banks, and when someone mentions, the London Bullion Exchange, which is where they exchange gold, has sold 500 tons of gold in the last few years that will never, ever be produced. It's called paper gold, that the gold held on deposit by many countries doesn't exist, that half the gold bars in the world are made out of zinc with gold plating, that, things we could tell you. In the past 6 years, the oil deposits available for the market have increased 40%, and that the only way they could stabilize gasoline prices in the U.S. to keep gasoline over $1 a gallon is that the United States is currently the largest exporter of gasoline in the world, and that if we weren't the largest exporter of gasoline, diesel, and other refined fuels, the U.S. would never have to import. We reached in the collapse of 2007-2008, the U.S. as of that time no longer needed any foreign oil because our domestic usage went down, and there's an argument between which economists you believe, and of course they're all crooks anyway. But our usage went down between 8 and 12%, And why is that, of course? Because people who don't have jobs don't have to drive to jobs, and people who can't pay for gasoline sure can't buy it. I mean, there's little question about that. You can even go to Britain. I do the drive from London out the M4, heading past Reading, 3:30 in the afternoon. You used to go 5 miles an hour, or sometimes get out of the car and look for something to do, walk around, because all you'd see was blocked traffic. You can now do it at 80 miles an hour because nobody has any jobs and nobody's driving. You don't see traffic jams. You find the same thing outside the Frankfurt airport. I would do the run from Frankfurt to Ludwigshafen, and the highway's there, a notorious parking lot. They now move at about 40 miles an hour. They used to never move at all. It was the biggest parking lot in the world. The world economy long ago collapsed. Even China is staring at being broke. One of the few countries that secretly still has money are the Japanese. They show that they have a massive amount of debt, but they at least owe it to themselves, which is close. It's as close as you come to freedom.
Now, when it comes to, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead, Stu.
When it comes to robbing this country, though, the real focus has been that Denver crowd. I mean, they have robbed and looted this country.
Yeah.
You've watched this happen.
You managed to have a daughter marry right into the middle of it.
Yep. Yeah, but the thing is Millman and Mizell have been involved in every scandal there has been, major scandal, financial. Everything from junk bonds to looting of the country to Charles Keating and the BCCI.
Well, we go back to the Columbia Silverado savings and loan problem with Millman and Mizell, where Neil Bush was involved, and I would tell you that I'm lifting a couch right now. That's part of the enjoyment of radio. But Neil Bush was involved in putting the couch back down. Neil Bush was involved in a land deal with Mizell Millman through Silverado, a savings and loan. $300 million was missing from the savings and loan, tied to a land deal north of the Dallas or the Denver airport. The debt for Silverado and Columbia savings and loan was, and the debt and assets was purchased by Ford Motor Company Credit, who ordered an audit using a Denver law firm. I wish I could remember the name of Kramlich and Anderson, but I can't. So I don't know who the law firm was. But I did see a letter that came out in that audit with the name Neil Bush on it, sent to the U.S. Attorney, citing that Neil Bush, I believe the terms on the letter were mail and wire fraud, and he was recommended for prosecution. I do remember discussions with people within the Bush White House that told me that the President of the United States was being blackmailed over his son. And, I have heard that, but that's because I hang out with all the wrong people. You might have heard of some of that stuff.
I've heard quite a bit of it and know about all that crap that went on at Silverado, or at least a lot of it, because, I had the pleasant honor, should we say, of being a political prisoner for blowing the whistle on that and causing those 4 congressional investigations on HUD, Silverado, the Denver airport, and the Keating 5. Well, actually, it was the MDC Holdings that turned into the Keating 5. So, they held me as a political prisoner, and here I am in with all these drug operators who were being writted up, mainly Iran-Contra players, the 5,000 of them that were arrested during that period of time in 92, that Daddy Bush was thrown underneath the bus, should we say, to shut them up while he was giving Ollie North and Cap Weinberg and Admiral Poindexter presidential pardons to cover everything up. And so while I was locked up in there, I heard all the stories on how the drug dealers were being paid.
One of the interesting things, I don't know if you know this or not, this will be fun for just one of these fun asides. How many people in the audience know that John McCain has a presidential pardon?
Well, I didn't know it, but I know that I tried to get John McCain. Nearly had him going to jail in that 1990 time frame because of Time Magazine and what we were doing with baby and stuff.
McCain has a presidential pardon.
Over that?
And if you wanted a confirmation on that, it came up during the election. Veterans Against John McCain, Marine Sergeant Major John Holland, now deceased. Matter of fact, anyone that got too close to John McCain has ended up dead. John Holland's gone. Earl Hopper's gone. U.S. Veterans Dispatch. It's been that many years. That one will come back to me. But
and who's John
McCain's
handler?
McCain, the Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah, and who's his handler? Mizell.
That I didn't know.
Larry Mizell. If we did a story, Gordon, it's up on my website under table of contents off the front. It's in the third column. It said John McCain's wife hiding more profits in untaxed offshore accounts. There was one key corporation to all this stuff. It was called Real Corp Realty, the payoffs of congressmen and senators. And those Real Corp Realty owned shopping centers all across America, mainly in cities such as Las Vegas, Phoenix, and so forth. And that was
I shouldn't tell you that one of my friends is married into that family. Out of Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, Columbus, Ohio, and the Millman, the Columbus.
Yeah.
The three legs of Iran-Contra, Ohio, Denver, and Arkansas.
They're family friends.
So I mean,
it's good.
Yeah, you have quite a knowledge of Charles Keating and Leonard and Larry and all the BCCI stuff.
Well, we had a long-term relationship with Lincoln because one of the things we did was we used to lease commercial aircraft, and the cash for doing this, and it's a lot of money underwriting fleets of aircraft for airlines. And that money came through Lincoln Savings, which normally you'd think of a savings and loan as a mom-and-pop establishment that wouldn't be lending money to airlines, to governments, to auto companies, to to large commercial banks. They were, if anything, one of the great economic powers of the world, and none of us, I'll tell you something that none of us ever did, none of us ever asked where any of the money came from. We used to just, hey, it's available to borrow, the rates were good, the deals, that's one of the things of going to business school. You learn to turn your back on all of the hard questions, and we've developed an entire society that does that. And since there are no hard questions, since we have no news in the United States, we're sitting here talking. For all I know, we could be just talking to ourselves. But if you turn on the news, all you will get, I can't even call it live. I call it the pop culture news. I was looking at Huffington Post one day, counting the stories, and on the front page, 30% of the stories, the lead-ins use the word naked.
Naked, yeah.
Hey, Gordon, I know you can't stay too much longer, but boy, I tell you, this has been an incredible interview. You've been really dropping some bombshells here.
Well, let's keep him on there. Gordon, Deborah Dupree was going to come on in a half an hour from now. And if you see her 3-1 exchange,
I'll tell you.
Yeah,
I'll let you know.
But let's run on this next 20 minutes and see if we got any callers too. But Gordon, I want to touch on if I can. I want to touch on the BCCI and all this stuff. Of course, that was all tied up with Keating, and they were sitting there laundering all that money to, Bank and Credit and Commerce International.
Now, Stu, let me jump in here.
Yes.
This is one of the issues I have. This is me taking you to the woodshed. You have spent, and this is where I tripped over you 8 years ago. I tripped over you as someone and I've watched you, okay, and I watched you go from a wronged individual to a crusader, at times bordering on, and this is where, this will call me a professional, because yes, I am. I work in the intelligence community currently as a professional at a reasonably high level, and if I were doing an evaluation of you are. The problem is that you seem obsessed with what you're doing. Now, what I know is it's from people trying to kill you, imprison you, that you have seen an underbelly in this country that people will never see. The problem is that there's no way to communicate to people that I'm sitting here in beautiful downtown Toledo, Ohio, but I live in relative comfort. I own a horse farm. I've got a home in Europe. I travel by private plane. I work for a large corporation. I sit on the board of more. I do very well financially. I'm a 1%er easily, although not in the myself sort of end, because there are even things rats won't do. But I live relatively well. But everything seems okay. Now, I can't go to the local shopping center without passing 6 people with signs saying "work for food," but I can easily turn my back on them and say they just aren't working hard enough. And then when you look inside the houses, of course, if you're in a gated community somewhere, nobody around me is hungry. But you still drive past houses. You don't see inside there. You go to a Home Depot, for instance, and which is is a decent company. I love shopping there. Colin Powell's on the board there. But I look at the guy that's helping me find nails or drywall screws or whatever, and I realize this guy's got a college education, and he's over 60 years old. Sometimes well over 60 years old. And this is someone that could have an executive position or be a United States senator. He's helping me find nails. Is he doing this because his pension plan was looted by someone like Millman or Mizell? Very likely. And we've seen one after the other disappear, or because his job was shipped to Mexico and then to China, or I don't know where China sends jobs when they get tired of electrocuting small children who build our appliances, but they must have somewhere else. Maybe they ship them off planet. But you look at these people around us, and that the United States has become a sea of hidden suffering. That people...
How do we change it, Gordon?
Well, Ron Paul said all the right things until he thought he had a shot at the presidency. And then Paul began sounding like his son, who I don't have such a high opinion of. I was offered a job as his chief of staff back in 2005. And I was told by a friend who worked for... whatever it is, I call it the ABC Detective Agency, that you and Paul would get along really well, and he needs someone that has some background in defense and global economics. He needs somebody like that with him to give him more depth, and because he could go somewhere, but he's seen as a joke. Well, Ron Paul won the Republican nomination. Ron Paul would have been elected president. Now, Paul's position on abortion doesn't agree with mine, even close. I think that if you are a genuine conservative, you don't tell people what to do. That's part of being a conservative. People make their own mistakes. We don't legislate religion. We don't legislate moral values. How in the name of God can anyone talk about wanting to prevent abortion and then supporting, I'll tell you, one of the world's worst criminals is John Hagee, who is the most powerful religious leader in the United States. This man...
I'm in agreement with you there about him.
That's one of the most dangerous people I know of. Joseph Stalin would be afraid of John Hagee. Hey, Adolf Hitler would cross the road to avoid John Hagee.
Yeah, I'm in agreement, and Pat Robertson's another one, and he's such a phony baloney. Matter of fact, one of the Bush crime syndicate,
the Marine
CIA.
Pat Robertson.
Yeah. One of the CIA.
When Robertson was being sent to Korea, and his father was the United States Senator, as soon as he landed in Japan, he got to a telex, got a hold of his dad, and he no longer had to go to Korea. Spent the Korean War as a, I think, what did he do, run a bowling alley?
Yeah, and I'm familiar with the money laundering because I know somebody that did it on behalf of Daddy Bush for Pat Robertson, stealing everybody's Christian faith-based money, and then they were laundering it overseas. And Pat Robertson today is one of the biggest stockholders of, what is it, the Bank of Ireland, I think it is?
Which, by the way, oddly enough, is insolvent, which I find almost humorous. But there is no more dangerous group to me than Christians who don't pay attention. There's no, and how do I fault people for not paying attention when, if you live a normal life and do what the television tells you to do, like 1984, you go stand in front of the screen, you turn it on, you turn to CNN or Fox News, and any idiot can see who runs every network in the world. It's all run by organized crime. And you do what you're told. Everything you're told is a lie. Everything. Everything that Stu and I learned for years. And, of course, anything you learn, if you've ever worked in government, working inside of Washington, they sit inside. It's the little loopy road where you drive around and around and around all day, and either you take the exits inside or you head out to the Pentagon or CIA or whatever. But it's like a little rat wheel, that goes on forever. And the people inside there look out at the rest of the people in the United States and say, "What a bunch of suckers they are! What can we do to them today?" And they just laugh about it.
The whole top of our government is corrupt, isn't it?
Well, there's one basic goal. This is why you stay out of Washington. The first idea that you have, and no matter how idealistic you are, you have to have at least a 12,000 square foot home. You have to own at least a couple of S-Series German automobiles, something of, at least 5 liter. You've got to have a country club membership. You want to travel on private jets. So in order to do that, you have to do what people wish you to do. You have to become part of the Israel lobby, because that is the key to where all drug money comes from. And all drug money is how you get reelected. The first thing you do, and this is whatever you're in, whether you've run for public office or you're a lobbyist or whatever, the things that you realize inside Washington. President George W. Bush. Now, things I can say about him. President George W. Bush is gay. A lot of people are gay. He's gay, and publicly gay.
I'm aware.
I would think everyone in the world knows this, and it's perfectly fine. If you're a parent and you have a child that's gay, you don't stop loving the child. Even Dick Cheney has had to come to grips with that. The Darth Vader of all time.
With his daughter.
He has a lesbian daughter, and he's openly admits that and deals with her, and that as it's still his daughter. About Bush, though, I'll tell you, Dick Cheney's daughter isn't responsible for thousands and thousands of people losing their lives, or isn't an absolute hypocrite. Or you could say that I have friends that worked within the White House, and I can tell you for certain that top members of the White House, top advisors to the president, the president's top national security advisor, openly spied for Russia and China. I know of one cocktail party where the president's top security advisor actually passed a sheaf of nuclear weapons plans in front of Paul Wolfowitz and Condoleezza Rice, standing in front of them, pulled them out of a bag, handed them over to a foreign agent, and said, "These are the nuclear plans you wanted." No one said a word.
Oh man!
What are they trying to drive us into? A new
and
world order?
I will tell. And here's how I know of this. First of all, the FBI has this recorded on tape. Secondly, an FBI informant was one of the group, but it was recorded. And this person just went back to work. And then when it came time for him to be arrested, John Ashcroft stopped all FBI investigations of espionage.
Mr. Ashcroft.
And there are a group of FBI agents out there, a corps of FBI agents that are waiting to be unleashed. Now, things I can talk about right now. We talk about the Gulf Cartel. There are 5 cartels operating out of Mexico, and they work closely. The Gulf Cartel is the one that works furthest east in Mexico, and the end of the cartel, essentially, it's a double hub. One is Houston, Texas, and the other end, of course, is Denver, Colorado. The Gulf Cartel maintains banking facilities in the Caymans. It maintains a strong presence in Washington with key members of Congress, and it maintains a strong presence in Cuba. Now, members of the Gulf Cartel have put up millions of dollars tied to conservative groups within Houston, Texas, have made attempts. And since Veterans Today, we run a veterans employment agency, which includes we help supply employment for Tier 1 military contractors. It's part of what we do. I certainly employ more than a few of such people, and this group has come to a number of our people and asked them to take part in a plot against the government of the United States. And
the cartel. Mm-hmm.
Oh, the cartel?
Yeah, is that who you're speaking of? Taken against the United?
I'm speaking of the cartel. I'm speaking of
Mizell.
People tied to an organization in a religious organization headquartered in Salt Lake City. I'm talking about people within the oil industry and arms industry, and that they have death lists that include the President, Vice President, Secretary of Defense. Oh, and I actually know of people who've been approached.
It comes back to the APEC boys, this cartel that's going on.
Key government contracting groups of special operations people, some of whom work in security analysis for America's nuclear facilities, have been approached to involve themselves in a decapitation of the American government after the election, because apparently Obama is bad for the drug business and organized crime. I always thought he was good for them, but apparently he's not morally flexible enough. I hate that about a president, because that may be the last paying industry we have is the narcotics industry. If we can't traffic in human organs, sex traffic with small children. Oh, that's the other thing about Washington. Let me head back here. The great addiction in Washington is peddling children for sex. Now, Stu, are you familiar with the term Franklin?
I'm past that point. How about Jack Abramoff and the stories we did of his child sex rings in Washington, D.C.? Also, the Finders and Franklin, I'm familiar with, except it just wasn't limited to Franklin. It was every orphanage in the world went to Washington. And have I got some evidence on that? It'd blow anybody's mind. They nearly killed a reporter over it.
That key members of our government the U.S. government, the most powerful tool that binds the Washington community together are two things. One are, key members of the Bush administration, including 3 members of the National Security Council used to cruise restrooms together. And the other thing is, of course, is child sex, and we're talking children as young as 5 years old. And Stu, would you be saying that you have information that members of our government at the highest level would contact organized crime groups, and they would put in specific requests for children of certain size, weight, and hair color, and they would be kidnapped off the street, taken to Washington, D.C., sexually abused and killed, and that such things have happened at Camp David?
I'm in agreement 100%. You've said it right, because it has gone on.
And that
it's just off the charts. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And everyone working within the intelligence community, and we have 16 official intelligence agencies, between intelligence and law enforcement, 46, that I have gotten this story. Not only have I gotten it from the highest levels of government, I had to at some point stop talking here.
No.
Back myself into a corner.
Gordon, you're like an encyclopedia. It's like I am in
yeah.
a sense. Yours is
Gordon?
definitely connected to the intelligence.
We've had more than
world.
one president of the United States that was a pedophile.
Yeah,
okay,
I know.
Can I say that?
We got sure we can say that. We can call George Jr. and Sr. and or Daddy Bush is definitely one, and of course Dick Cheney's one, and even from what I understand, Clinton was one.
Gordon,
well, go ahead.
I just have a quick question. How much does just your back of the envelope guess, if you had to guess, would Daddy Bush, H.W. Bush, be worth?
Daddy Bush is worth around $60 trillion.
Good Lord.
And I heard 79, but I could be off.
I'm not. Hey, hey Stu, $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there.
Yeah, I know.
Enough for him, and I will tell you that none of that money was earned.
No, it's never earned by any of these people. They've never made a legit dollar in their entire life. It's always been steal from the American people and governments and narcotics and weapons.
The Wanta money is very real.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, can you talk about that? Yeah, can you talk about that?
Lee and I have been friends for many years.
I've known Lee since '97 through Bill McCoy. You remember Bill McCoy?
Yeah.
Yeah, a good friend of mine.
Yeah, you can if you know Lee, you can ask Lee about what his relationship is with me. It's not entirely unofficial.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Lee was National Intelligence Chief under Reagan, and for a time Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Defense. I would also say he was CIA Chief of Station from Vienna, but I couldn't say that because that would be wrong. That Lee Wanta was involved in a project working for President, and of course, damning Lee Wanta, who is he's an enigmatic character. One of the things I had done to find out how much Wanta had, because Wanta had worked at a pay level considerably above my own at one point there. You know, I didn't walk in and out of the White House, and I certainly wasn't traveling with the Bush family continually, or the Saudi king, which he did. But to actually debrief Wanta at some point, and I was asked to do this. I had my chief of staff, who is the former NATO G2, if you know what that is.
Yes.
A Special Forces senior flag-ranked officer, intelligence officer, and my other, and his deputy, by the way, that works for me at Adamus Corporation, is Gene Khrushchev. And most of my staff are senior military guys. Gene was I think his last billet was Russian ambassador to Afghanistan. Staff includes General Hamid Gul, former head of Pakistan's ISI, and who is both not only rabidly pro-American, but he's so pro-American that Bush had him put on the terror watch list. If you really love the United States and you aren't on the terror watch list, there's something wrong with you. A couple of odd things I'd mention. I was talking with Lee, but I had Lee debriefed, and Lee had personal knowledge of probably 5 times the intelligence transactions that I have, and I think I'm the big Rolodex black book guy, and Lee makes me look like a joke. But one of the classic discussions with Lee, I was asking Lee the last time he saw Colonel Timothy Osmond, who worked for Lee. Now, Colonel Timothy Osmond maintained the U.S. stockpiles of Stinger missiles that were used against the Russians in Afghanistan, and then worked for the U.S. in West Africa and was intelligence liaison between the CIA and the Saudi royal family. Now, Colonel Timothy Osmond's other name is Osama bin Laden. Now, I asked about their last meeting in Peshawar. And this was classic, of course. Osmond was holding 116 Stinger missiles for the U.S., which I guess if he was the head of Al-Qaeda, he might have wanted to shoot down airliners with those. Instead, he returned them to the U.S. Now, I don't have the figure, but I know we had to pay him by substantial gratuity to get them back. But, when debriefing somebody, I ask things, what was he wearing? What was he wearing on his feet? Clothes, dusty clothes, sandals. It's almost there's this. We've got a Jesus figure here in our hands, by the way, which has been done too often. Except there's a certainly wily aspect to Bin Laden. And then I said, when you're talking of Bin Laden and the CIA chief of station from Islamabad was there. This was in Peshawar, a town not far from the Afghan border inside Pakistan. When you're talking to Bin Laden, did you use an interpreter? I said, no, Bin Laden speaks perfect English, like every other wealthy Saudi. And I think about this since I've worked in and out of Saudi Arabia, as so many of us have. I was 5 years in the UAE. I said, yeah, of course, everybody does speak perfect English. And it's funny, but the Osama bin Laden's, and one of the things I checked is, we have newspaper reports from all over the Muslim world that Osama bin Laden died December 13th, 2001. And I said, do you have any information about it? He says, yeah, that's when he died. Well, what happened to him? He said that his body was flown to Qatar and then turned over to his family. And that there are strict rules, by the way, and Muslims are not tossed into the water. They have to be underground within 48 hours. And they did everything possible to get his body returned to his family. And I say, well, at what point did Osama bin Laden become an enemy of the U.S. or become untrustworthy, according to his employers, the CIA? And I said, never at any time. He was always considered not only our most loyal, but one of our most capable assets. And he was, if anything, our linchpin to our relationship with Saudi Arabia, our linchpin to our relationship with the royal family in Saudi Arabia that he was extremely close to, but one of the most skilled operatives that we had. But he had one problem, of course, that he would speak honestly about things, but So does everyone else in the intelligence business. No one wants to sound like they're a Fox News Glenn Beck type, because to anybody who really does any of this for a living, those people are seen as dangerously delusional. So were there honor and justice in the world, Osama bin Laden died of kidney disease December 13th, 2001, while actively employed by the CIA.
I've had that Stinger missile. I have the Stinger missile documented. I was given by Leo.
Oh, the Stingers. This is a classic.
Ted Gunderson, out there in California.
Now here's what Lee told me he did. Lee told me he had them trucked up and flown out of by commercial carrier. Had them flown to Frankfurt, where they landed. Now Frankfurt at the time was two airports. There was Rhein-Main, which was the U.S. Air Force base. They landed on the commercial side, and they were seized by the German Treasury Department. He was telling me that George Shultz had come after him about that. That it was that the idea of landing arms on the wrong side of the airport. And I know Want is a joker, that he had obviously set this up and was just giggling about it. But if we were honest about things, there would be a memorial to Osama bin Laden.
But they had to keep the boogeyman alive. And
Yep. Osama bin Laden, technically, is someone that gave his life in service of the United States, and is considered a hero. Now, I've talked with him with General Hamid Gul. Gul knows him reasonably well personally. They never got along. Susan Lindauer had met with bin Laden on a couple of occasions. They were never close, And Lee said, frankly, he was, but who bin Laden was close to, of course, was Brzezinski. They were very close. And Brzezinski's become an interesting person. Zbigniew Brzezinski, who's the director of the Council on Foreign Relations, as he's gotten a bit older, Brzezinski has become born-again honest. So if you want to find someone that will tell you the truth, whether you want it or not, that's why you have so many people that will go so far as to try to put, the great Satan Henry Kissinger in the same category as Brzezinski, because Brzezinski is now speaking the truth. He has actually come out. I shall sin no more. So if you want to find reality, go on YouTube and pull up many of the interviews, including the interviews. Go to the December 2nd, 2010 interview on NPR with Judy Woodruff, where Zbigniew Brzezinski exposes WikiLeaks as an Israeli intelligence operation against the United States.
Yes, we had put that out. Tom Hennigan and I did.
Yeah, that Julian Assange is a Mossad agent, and that Julian Assange, that the leaks that and I will tell you that accidentally within the material, WikiLeaks output, by the way, is not from this poor Manning kid who he's gone through too much and he should be released. He's a dupe. Manning is a dupe. Manning is fronting for this dangerous narcissist who works for Julian Galland or whatever, the Prime Minister of Australia. That's his his mini me. That and Rupert Murdoch. How do we explain that Rupert Murdoch runs the most dangerous intelligence organization in the world? That
financed
Fox News,
by Leonard Millman.
Yes, that Fox News, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, and the rest of the News Corp organization. Of course, in Britain, you understand that 47 News Corp employees are under arrest right now, and they're trying to spin this, when you read it in the news, that if you are blackmailing the head of an intelligence agency, to get secrets to sell to China. That is considered phone hacking and abuse of a news service. Now, some of the rest of us would see that as treason and espionage. But when you know all the right people and you belong to the right clubs and you have a prime minister in a country that, when you were tapping his telephone, you learned that he and his wife had murdered one of their own children who was significantly retarded, developmentally disabled. Let me adjust that one here. We're too old to remember all of the proper speak. But that's how Mr. Murdoch and his son have managed to stay free. They have a recording. Now, things we know about David Cameron. At 25 years old, David Cameron flew to Pelindaba in South Africa, along with, do you know who Dr. David Kelly is?
Yes.
Well, a very young David Cameron and David Kelly flew to South Africa. Now, South Africa had developed nuclear weapons. Working with Israel, they built 10 Hiroshima-type bombs. I would tell you they exploded one to test it, but I wouldn't know where and when. But if I did, I would say September 22nd, 1979, on a barge off Prince Edward Island, 300 miles south of Cape Town. That it was an 18.2 kiloton blast with an 80 millisecond double flash, and was picked up by our Vela satellite system and SOSUS network. I would say that, but I don't have that kind of information. Giving that out would be a violation of national security, so I'm not going to say anything about it. But one of the issues that I've been dealing with lately, and I belong to a huge gossip crew between German, British, French intelligence, MI6, MI5, special branch, and all we do is it's a gossip fest. If you want to learn about the intelligence business, just watch Bird Notice. It'll tell you absolutely everything. Bird Notice is wonderful. If you haven't seen the show, watch the whole thing. Bird Notice is hey, you'll be able to work for an intelligence agency when you're done. I think that's how we train the CIA. We make them watch Bird Notice reruns. But
Gordon,
one
can
of
you tell?
One of the problems here. Good.
I was just going to say, after you finish your thought, can you talk a little bit about the Wanta funds for those that are new to that, and because there's been a lot of disinformation.
We could jump in here and say this: that President Reagan had a vision that he was that he used, and Wanta is absolutely brilliant at currency transactions, which the government of China took part in. But through a series of currency transactions based on initially $5 billion given to Wanta to finance the Vienna-based AmeriCorp investment.
Ameritrust, yes.
Ameritrust. Wanta raised, as of the 1990s, the funds he had raised were $27 trillion, and that money was to pay off the national debt and to be held in trust for the people of the United States in perpetuity to renew the industrial base of the U.S. And it was going to be the living bequest of President Reagan.
Wow.
Until the money was stolen by the Bush family. And we could talk about Howie Kwok, who at a meeting in Singapore with, see who else was at the table, Jan Morton Hager, who was chief counsel for the Central Intelligence Agency at the time, that George Herbert Walker Bush demanded that the money be turned over to him entirely, that Howie, who represented the Chinese government at the table, went across the table and struck Bush and was found dead the next morning. And the $27 trillion disappeared. That approximately $7 trillion U.S. dollars is supposedly sitting at the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond in the name of Ameritrust. There is a pay order for this money, a Supreme Court decision, and a pay order signed by President Obama that a fair amount of this money is under my personal authority, which to be designated to fund a center for housing and rehabilitation of veterans, which, by the way, would involve no large salaries and no overhead. And there are more than a few of us of reasonable honor who will do that. This money would also fund a high-speed rail system for the entire U.S., all of which would be manufactured in the country, giving you coast-to-coast travel for a little more than $200 at over 200-plus miles an hour. That it would build a series of hotels that would initial employment would be 50,000 and go up to 500,000, and that this money is designated entirely to pay off the national debt in its entirety, pay off the debt of most states. This money, $27 trillion, will build the rail system, bail out the entire country, buy us out of the Federal Reserve System entirely, pay off all U.S. debt, put us on a solid currency basis, and eliminate the Federal Reserve System. And it would restore manufacturing jobs and restore a solid economy to the U.S., where people actually would get up in the morning and go to productive jobs and actually make something that a lot of us miss doing. But the money is there.
Now the $27 trillion, I'm aware of.
Now, which is now one heck of a lot more than $27 trillion.
So have they recovered? Have they recovered $27 trillion? Oddly enough, this is kind of a joke here. Not that long ago, I have friends in the banking business. I work in international banking. The group I work with, Adamas Corporation, owns banks in Switzerland and elsewhere. One of the banks, we had purchased a bank that I didn't necessarily, and it wasn't my decision, but a bank where I was, I'm senior vice president of a bank. I'm deputy chairman of the board of Adamas, which does 35 billion euros a year. It's largely an aerospace defense corporation. That's one of the things is that in what I say, I'm answerable to a board of directors. The problem is that I kind of run the board of directors. So and the primary stockholders are lifelong friends. But one of the banks we bought put me in a position where we have partial ownership of the New York Federal Reserve Bank. Wow.
It's theoretically possible here. I could actually nominate myself to the board, the Fed, which I find more than slightly ironic. When you look at it here, I grew up in a house in Detroit. My dad was an auto worker. My bathroom is bigger than the house I grew up in, and I used to work for Bell Labs. I was just an electrical engineer at one point. I'd call me a failed history teacher. And the only way I ended up in government employment is because I couldn't get a real job. If I had to do it all over again, I would have driven a milk truck rather than work around politicians and spies. Now, for instance, if somebody wanted to see who I am or who I know or whatever, let's say you went to if you
pulled up the films of the inauguration of the last president of Nigeria, the current president, Jonathan Goodluck, or Goodluck Jonathan, as they say it there. You'll only see one white person sitting at the table with him at the inaugural ball. That's me. You'll only see one person at the dais with a white face when he's being sworn in. That's me.
Now, the one
I'll show up.
You're, we got an idea here.
All you have to, if you want to YouTube enough things, you'll find who I travel with and deal with.
Yeah. Now the question is like in the process, I'm aware of Christine Laguerre and what she's doing, okay, and the IMF chairman with Leo. What are we looking at in time frame, do you believe, as far as by the end of the year of this the plan going?
I talk with Leo about this money because we have sat and planned out how to bring back the United States and to build a decent life for the American people, and we are truthfully at war with it's not just the Bush family.
With politicians in this country, with the spook world.
Right now we have $7.1 trillion that can be turned over immediately. Behind this, we're going to go after the rest of it. And it's been a relentless long-term battle. And we have won the court cases to do this. The pay orders are there, and the checks should have been written. And I love reading these websites about how Lee Wanta is a secret agent of the Illuminati or whatever. Tell the people, Stu, what kind of person is Lee Wanta?
Well, he's solid as a rock, and I've known him since the days when Bill McCoy knew him, and he came to Bill. He's a
former tool and die maker from Milwaukee, a fanatically strict Roman Catholic who loves the United States and the people of the United States more than anything, a person who has suffered as a Christ-like figure, who has been tortured, kidnapped, imprisoned, as so many other people have. I don't have to tell you about this, do I, Stu?
No, you don't.
You understand that half of and veterans today, if you take a look at it, if you get a chance, pull up the website and check the editorial board there. See who's on it, okay?
Yeah.
And I've got people that run governments there. I have people. We've got people who are and should be to the American people heroes. They're on the terror watch list.
Well,
who are on the board of a veterans organization.
Yep. Yeah.
I choose my heroes where I can find them.
I am. The terrorist watch list with the FBI stooges running around here.
Oh, I've got. I look at the three women I deal with here, and that's Gwyneth Todd, Cybele Edmonds, and Susan Lindauer. That the three of them are still alive. Valerie Plame does not work with us, and could easily do so. But we have the other three, and these are three people that the U.S. That got to know too much that the U.S. was going to have killed.
Yep. Yeah. And Valerie, she lost what, 240 some odd of her informants, agents in that whole thing, about 5 federal agents and 240 informants, because Junior had to come up with this great scheme of sneaking weapons into Iraq to cover his butt.
Let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story about the yellow cake, the imaginary Niger yellow cake. Part of the cover story that was debunked by Plame over the yellow cake uranium that was to go to Saddam that never existed. Well, that transaction, the phony transaction that was invented that she debunked, involved the wife of a Boston anesthesiologist, an MIT grad microbiologist named Afia Siddiqui, born in Pakistan. Dr. Afia Siddiqui, an American citizen, several years ago, we're talking, I believe, around 2000, returned to Pakistan to see her family, took her two children with her, and disappeared from the streets of Karachi. Her husband was a physician in Boston. This is a young lady, attractive, intelligent, MIT grad. She was accused of being the conduit for the yellow cake uranium that never existed in the Dick Cheney imaginary, phony terror plot that nearly sent him to prison for life if it weren't for a presidential commutation and a fall guy. But Siddiqui was kidnapped off the streets of Karachi by the son of General Musharraf, was sold to the CIA for $55,000 US, she and her two children. They were shipped to Bagram Air Force Base, where her two children died. She was kept there for 5 years, where she was raped, starved, and tortured by members of U.S. Special Forces, by Navy SEALs, and by CIA, all under the direct supervision of General McChrystal and United States Air Force personnel.
And the fall guy for that was Scooter Libby.
Yeah, the fall guy was Scooter Libby. After 5 years of imprisonment, Dr. Siddiqui was down to 87 pounds and crippled after 5 years of being tortured and being held illegally. Now, this is very classic. During her last interrogation session, she is accused of leaping out of her wheelchair, and she was tried for this and convicted in a New York court, that she leaped out of her chair, knocked down 2 Navy SEALs, disabled 3 U.S. Army Special Forces, seized an M4 carbine from one of them, tried to kill 5 of them, and was shot in the stomach by her translator. And that was the only way that 2 Navy SEALs and 3 U.S. Special Forces could handle a crippled 87-pound woman, who, by the way, was in belly chains at the time. You'll love this. Wow. She's doing 87 years in prison based on this. And here's the classic. It's like the O.J. trial. Now, her translator, the person that was translating for her, shot her. Translator. Wait a minute. She's an American citizen, married to an anesthesiologist. She has a doctorate from MIT. Everyone in Pakistan speaks English. I wonder why she had a translator. Any ideas, Stu?
Yeah. One that shot her.
Now, one of my good friends runs the worldwide organization that has been trying to free her. The entire Islamic world. You will find photographs of her on every lamppost. Free Afia Siddiqui. And that's Admiral Iftikhar Sarowi, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the Army of Pakistan, and one of the finest people I know. Now, one of my other friends who's dedicated to having Dr. Siddiqui released is the former cricket player Imran Khan. I don't know if you've heard of him.
No.
Imran Khan will be assuming the presidency of Pakistan. Imran Khan's also one of my good friends. I suggest that I remember last time I saw him, I had Jeff. You know who Jeff Gates is?
I've heard a name, Gates, but
Jeff Gates was chief of staff for Russell Long and chief attorney for Senate Taxation Committee. Anyway, I was with Jeff. Jeff and I were in Rawalpindi. It was the Pakistani elections. We were sitting up with Khan for the evening, and I had I was on the couch next to they have a government in exile for Baluchistan, which is a
a breakaway province from Pakistan. The guy sitting next to me had been shot 3 times earlier in the day and was wrapped from head to foot like a mummy. It's still dripping on the rug. The electricity went off. Khan had a comb and lantern at his desk. Now, Khan's basically, it's hard to describe, and you really need to look him up, but Khan is the equivalent of Jack Kennedy and Antonio Banderas mixed. He's an Oxford grad. He's the greatest player in the history of cricket, but he's also there's a little bit of rock star to Imran Khan. His ex-wife, who he's still in fairly good terms with, is Jemima Goldsmith, niece of Lord Rothschild, who he got to convert to Islam, by the way. And she was actually jailed in Pakistan by Musharraf at some point. And then she left him and moved in with Hugh Grant, as I remember, in 2007. It's this colorful family anyway. But Khan's a brilliant guy. Also, like Siljander, Khan's one of the nicest people I know. His approval rating in Pakistan is now 80%, and the U.S. will be out of Pakistan. No drones will cross there, and I will help him set up a less than corrupt government once he is in. And he will have control of the military because he has the full support and trust of the military, but they will have their first totally civil government. I plan on speaking for, and I have issues with how Christians are treated in Pakistan, and I will ask for that to be redressed. I am not a religious individual myself, but there are some areas within the Middle East where Christians are mistreated. One of the worst is
Israel.
I'd say, is Israel, where Christians are spat upon is the term, I guess, if I spoke better English. Can't do much about Israel, but I can. There are corrections in Pakistan. Pakistan's an interesting country, decent people, and there needs to be a settlement between Pakistan and India. I don't see that happening soon. I wish there were one. I would like to see both countries renounce nuclear weapons, but no one will as long as Israel has nuclear weapons, because the only thing that keeps Islam safe from obliteration by the nuclear weapons the United States and France furnished to Israel is the fact that Pakistan has between 400 and 500 nuclear weapons, considerably more than India. And not that I'd say this, but every time a Chinese plane unloads, 2 more arrive. Pakistan is armed to the teeth. Now, the idea that we have 2 countries where we have very poor people that are involved in an arms race, aircraft carriers, nuclear submarines, guided missiles, advanced stealth fighters, India and Pakistan, that has to stop. This world can be a very different place. Imran Khan will be the most influential person in the Islamic world. And as Jeff Gates and I would tell you, learn who Imran Khan is, because I don't care if he was born in Pakistan. He could be elected president of the United States. Just the women vote alone would do this. But you'd vote for him.
You're familiar with the fact Iran does have, what I've heard from NSA sources, they got 20, they believe, nuclear weapons. And that
5.
5, is it?
Yeah, they bought an SS-19 from in late 2002. It was a dry storage unit from the Ukraine with 550 kiloton weapons on it, and
from the Russian mob. Jewish Russian mob.
That's a rumor, but we're saying that they were acquired because there was a belief that the U.S. was going to invade Iran, and that was to be used to force the U.S. fleet
to stay so far out in the Indian Ocean that such an invasion would be impossible. There would be no potential for air support. Those weapons are what we would say not in play. Now, I'm military affairs correspondent for Press TV, by the way. Do you know that?
Yeah, I was told that by you here the other day.
Yeah, so I mean, with Iran, I can't claim to be a neutral party. If you go to presstv.com, I have worked very hard to make sure that Press TV, which is the Iranian network, is what American networks are not. It is not perfect, but is better than any American news source. So please listen to Press TV, and because work has been made to make sure that they have dissent. We make sure that Israel gets their moments on every show, and they do, and that there is reasonably balanced news there, and it wasn't as balanced as it is now, because it's my belief that if you set an editorial standard where there has to be a litmus test for people, where everybody has to abide to a certain word. I look at myself here. I look at what I knew and believed 10 years ago, and I look at what I know today. And so if I were put in charge of something 10 years ago and made up the rules for others, well, today I know that 10 years ago, about half of what I thought was true wasn't. So all I would have done was use that power to help make the world a more ignorant and worse place. The only way any of us will grow is dialogue. The enemy of dialogue is tyranny, and our news here in the U.S. and to some extent, many of the actions of our governments, state governments in particular. Look at Arizona; the corruption there is unbelievable. I watched Sheriff Larry Deaver of Cochise County was butchered openly. And in a traffic accident. Supposedly, this is a guy that would have an occasional beer, a man who stood up to the cartels, and he was supposedly at 4 p.m, triple and a half drunk, and died in a one-car accident. I have his autopsy photos. He was not just wearing a seatbelt. For anybody that would like to know how Sheriff Deaver was murdered, you could look up this term. It's called Boston Breaks. Have you ever heard that, Stu?
No, I haven't.
Boston Breaks. It's a CIA assassination technique involving automobiles for staging auto accidents.
Interesting.
It's from a term back from the 1930s when they used to cut people's brake lights. Well, they've developed something far more serious, but
how does it work?
We're saying that in each individual circumstance, there are technologies available where I could guarantee you wouldn't get 2 blocks without running into a telephone pole and breaking your neck, and no one would ever find out. And I can also tell you that we have.
Did they have to modify the car and put something else in there, I guess, to do that?
Oh no, this involved a kill switch in a staged accident.
It's always with the assassination attempts. It's usually the suicide.
And replacing Deaver with a cartel-friendly guy. And you'll watch Joe Arpaio, how he was silenced. Of course, his rogue department was murdering prisoners in his jail, so he was easy to get at and easy to blackmail. But the state of Arizona, all the way to the Attorney General, all the way to the governor, is a sea of organized crime.
Well, yeah, and the U.S. Attorney down there, the one that recently had to resign over the cartel, the Harry, or I call it Iran-Contra 2, the Hillary Clinton, and
well, you'll find that the Attorney General had a campaign finance problem, and that was tied to taking cartel money. And that was decided rather than to put him in prison, they were going to give him a fine.
Mm-hmm. and the U.S. attorney that used to be the head of the DEA and resigned as national DEA chairman, or the head of the DEA, became Arizona's DEA. Have you ever heard of Frank Notaris?
Oh, yes.
The largest drug lord in the world, with Jeb Bush.
We find Arizona is, well, here's a classic. Sheriff Deaver, who I would list as a fallen American hero, very much. And another very unlikely one is J.T. Reddy. I don't know if you ever heard of Reddy.
No.
Yeah.
J.T. Reddy had, oh, my heavens, I'm trying to think of his guy's name now, but the head of the, this I published 2 weeks ago. I had friends at the Charlotte, North Carolina airport when John McCain was heading through with the head of the National Socialist Movement. And I have a photograph where McCain spoke at their convention. But, oh, God, this guy's name's Hunt, I think. But I've got a photograph of McCain. This guy's got his arm around McCain, and it's, big smile, big skull from McCain. But, the National Socialist Movement is not, let's say, the great evil that it's put up to be. But McCain attended their national convention and flew in with their head, and we have a photo. I had it up within an hour. I had it published. It was rather funny. It's just you run into people when you travel on airlines, but. Talking about Arizona, let's talk about J.T. Reddy a little bit. J.T. Reddy ran an organization called the U.S. Border Guards. It was a militia-type group that he was accused of hunting drug dealers down off I-10, and they said he was killing them or whatever. Now, Reddy wore body armor. He's a former Marine, 6'2", 300 pounds. Any football team would be glad to have him on the line. By the way, that's a big, strong kid, pretty smart guy. I had talked with Reddy before he before he committed suicide by shooting himself with a 9mm pistol that was never fired, that fired 40 caliber rounds. In the process, now this is classic. Reddy died along with 5 members of his family. Now, a 6th member of his family, a 17-year-old girl, was hiding under the bed, and he didn't kill her because he'd forgotten that she was there. But this is a murder-suicide. They executed his family. One daughter survived, and he was accused in the local shopping rag. Village Voice Media's back page. And have you ever heard of Village Voice Media? This is another Mizell friend, by the way.
Yeah, Village Voice, yeah.
No, Village Voice Media. Do you know who I'm talking about? You may not.
The one out in New York?
No, that Village Voice ended in 1985.
Oh, it did. I didn't know it ended.
That was founded in 1955 by Norman Mailer.
Okay.
The name Village Voice was bought by a shopping guide organization out of Phoenix that publishes something called the Back Page. Back Page publishes in 16 cities advertisements for child sex. And according to the U.S. Department of Justice, are responsible for 82% of the child sex trafficking.
Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Now, you look all of this up, Village Voice Media. Now, the Village Voice Media, and now Sheriff Joe Arpaio arrested the people that run the Village Voice Media, and they were immediately released from his jail because the people who run Village Voice Media, which is the largest child trafficking ring in the United States, are also FBI informants who inform on motorcycle gangs, other groups, and periodically turn in Johns. You should look into this. You'll like this because it'll lead to your folks there.
Back to Larry Mizell and Leonard Millman.
Yeah, oh yeah. It goes right back there. His friends. They are Village Voice Media is related to the Anti-Defamation League, is closely affiliated with the Southern Poverty Law Center and APAC.
Yep, and Southern Poverty Law was attacking me back in 1994 before the Oklahoma City bombing when they started that crusade. Yeah.
Gordon?
The anti-Semitic that made death threats to Jewish families in Denver, I think, is what they're worth.
Yeah, you've got to stop doing that. I want you to promise never to threaten a major crime boss again. Because that makes you, if you threaten major organized crime members, that's anti-Semitism.
Yeah, right. I still have those recordings, by the way, up on my internet site of what I got arrested over. And all I did was set a few trigger words, Iran Contra and stuff. I never made any death threats, And then they took the words out of the true recordings.
Okay. The worst thing here is that, for whatever this is, I still work closely and directly with the U.S. government, and it's a tough one that we walk here because it's a question of we have so many people out there that look at themselves as anti-imperialists. Two things I'd bring up here, and I know we've got to be running short of time, or I'd like to.
We've got about 15 minutes here.
Oh my heavens, that's more time than I care to talk almost here. But we have the mainstream media is totally controlled by criminal organizations, and everything you hear, I wouldn't believe the weather and sports scores anymore.
Yeah, we have to look at the ownerships, right? We got Dean Singleton on the Associated Press out of Denver.
But more controlled than that is the alternative media. When you get those emails that you get that give you those fanciful stories, of conspiracies, or all of the conspiracy websites. Well, the majority of them are robo-sites run by, and when you track them down, Abe Foxman. Yep.
And then you got, you're speaking the alternatives, you've got all the, you've got the Glenn Becks, you've got, of course, we got.
No. I'm saying the internet all of the anti-Zionist, anti-Israel sites.
Yes.
Are run by the Israel lobby.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that tells you they're an anti-Zionist and that the Israelis have to leave the Palestinians alone, 90% chance they're working for the Mossad. 90% chance. Okay.
You want to name some of the sites?
If you want, if you have someone who is well informed and that you can trust, they will take this extra step. One that many of us know to be inexorably true. It's simple to prove. On 9/11, the New Jersey State Police arrested 3 Israeli citizens on the George Washington Bridge, who had blown up a truck in an attempt to destroy the bridge. Those 3 Israeli citizens. That arrest was done on live audio, which is it'd be listed on YouTube as Final Word 9/11 on my site. I have the audio of that arrest, the live audio of it, from the dispatcher, the officers on the scene, and then I have the news reports of the arrests. Now, the news reports do not list the explosion; the officers do. The news reports, which were taken off the satellite, include one from CNN. They don't mention the Israeli citizenship. They mention 3 people arrested, George Washington Bridge, explosives and weapons. The other one was done by Dan Rather. I have it online. I also have a video taken from a hotel that was released in a lawsuit a week ago by a lawsuit against one of the airlines that shows the airline crash into the Pentagon. And let me tell you the airline's position on that crash, because they're being cited for negligence. It's taken 11 years for the lawsuit to go through federal court, by the way, in the Eastern District of Virginia. federal court. And this was released by CNN, who had gotten a hold of this in 2002 and suppressed it. All of the copies were seized by the FBI. CNN was forced to release the video of the plane crash into the Pentagon. But there was no plane. There's a full video. There's no plane. There's no plane.
I put those videos
Not
up
the parking lot video. There's another one. And it was released in federal court last week.
Yes.
And CNN had broadcast it originally in 2002. Or you can watch Dan Rather talk about the arrest on the George Washington Bridge. Or I was on the phone at the time with a New York City detective who had picked up 3 suspects in a moving van filled with explosives who were trying to enter the Holland Tunnel.
Yes.
When they saw the NYPD blockade, they tried to turn around.
Urban moving systems, I think it was.
Yep. If you see the entrance to the Holland Tunnel, not a good place to turn around, because when NYPD puts up a roadblock, they figure that whoever's guilty is going to try to turn around. So they arrested the suspects. And Bernie Carrick, who's the police commissioner, and the show Blue Bloods actually has Tom Selleck playing Bernie Carrick, by the way. That's what Blue Bloods is about. Bernie Carrick had those suspects turned over to his personal custody, and they immediately disappeared. Where's Bernie Carrick now?
He's in jail on IRS tax evasion, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. And was he nominated to be Director of Homeland Security?
He sure was. But instead,
and you're saying
some good guys got him on IRS problems, didn't he?
And you're saying he's in prison now?
I think he is. Last time I heard, he was on his way there on IRS charges, wasn't he?
He's been there for several years now.
Yeah.
They had there was another arrest done at the Holland Tunnel. And there were 120 suspects with Israeli passports who were arrested on 9/11, and all but 5 were flown home the next day. The others were kept for 10 weeks, and that was the film crew that
was on top
let's
of the
say
building,
that said, I think the quote is here, and they love saying, oh, here's a classic, by the way. Let me jump back here. We'll call this my manic period. I was on the Mike Malloy show. If you know who Mike Malloy is, he's I hardly know how to describe him, but he's one of the stupidest people I've ever spoken to. It's an embarrassment knowing that he's loose. But anyway, Malloy was telling me that the New York Times had run a story totally debunking this, and that in actuality that CBS and CNN had run news stories that had rescinded their reports of the arrests of the bombing on the George Washington Bridge. And so you've got a computer in front of you. So the New York Times. No, there was an article in the New York Times, and nothing was rescinded, but there was an advertisement disagreeing with this placed in the Irish Times on the classified page. So a classified ad, 4 lines long, suddenly, to Mike Malloy or to others, suddenly becomes a front page article in the New York Times. Now, the other problem here is that the Irish Times isn't even a real newspaper. It's a 4-page shopping paper. There is no real Irish Times. But it created a likely story here, which they always expand into these denials, these endless we've Popular Science magazine said that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, that's got to be true then, or it wouldn't be in Popular Science. Hey, you should have put it in TV Guide.
Yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Because TV Guide, I will tell you, of any magazine in the United States, there is no Do they still even publish TV Guide? Because I'd read it. I always loved TV Guide.
I don't know whether they
One
do
of the few magazines that never lied to me.
Hey, Gordon.
One other. We're going just a few minutes, Gordon, but I'd ask you a straight-up question. Are you aware of Waymark Foundation, Millman?
Yes.
And are you aware of that Isley brokerage and the funneling of that Silverado money?
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Waymark and the payments to many of the people on the day of 9/11 or prior?
Oh, not just that. That Waymark was also tied with AIG and Kroll Security.
Yes.
And that at Kroll Security, the head of Kroll Security was the former head of Special Branch.
Yes.
And a first name Michael, we will let that go.
Right.
And his brother was CFO. Michael's a longtime friend of mine. His brother, a mountain climber, wonderful person, who some of these payments were funneled through, was soon thereafter run down while in Lisbon, Portugal, on a sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
Of course,
it came back to AIG.
And this is a guy that climbed Everest, by the way. So easy to hit on the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was. I'm the only person that the former head of Special Branch would actually contract to look for the killers of his brother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we found who they were.
We've only got maybe 3 or 4 minutes left. What do we need to do? What does the general public need to do, Gordon? In reality, what do they need to do?
In this case, we dodged a bullet. If you don't think we did, we dodged a bullet by defeating Romney. Now, I'm not saying Obama is fixing everything, but Romney was the worst possible thing we could do. We need to eliminate our political parties. We need to form a third party, absolutely, in the U.S., and to essentially rewrite our Constitution. Now, I will tell you that there were plans to do that were going to happen 10 days ago. There's a reason General Petraeus was thrown out of the CIA. Now, General Petraeus, I have no reason to think that he's a dishonorable person because, frankly, at least he's accused of having sex with women instead of little kids or rent boys.
Right.
So I mean, in Washington, hey, he's mainstream. Heaven forbid, it's the least thing wrong anyone has ever done. But I have reasonably solid and totally reliable information that groups within the military were planning on decapitating the United States government and then going to General Petraeus, who had nothing whatsoever to do with this, because he would have been the only figure with international respect and status left, and asking him to take the presidency of an interim government. And they felt they could control him, because Petraeus has a bit of a narcissism problem. He had been profiled for this. Yeah. But that was the plan. And many of the people involved in that plan, you know all of them, but they included within the Senate and House key members of the Republican leadership were actively involved. And if you are watching military officers having car accidents, heart attacks, being arrested for having sex with members of their staff or whatever, and the numbers are staggering right now, if you're watching this roll up here, that's what it's about.
So it's Obama weeding out these people?
Obama would have been dead 2 weeks ago if that hadn't started. If Petraeus weren't out of office, that set them aside.
Yeah.
And then the next plan, they went to they approached Mrs. Clinton, and then 3 senators, 2 in particular, tried to block the nomination of Susan Rice, and those are leaders of this plot. The ones that attacked Susan Rice. Now, part of this plot, by the way, was done by people within the U.S. military who were responsible for staging the attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi. That was part of this. The attack on Benghazi, if you remember Terry Jones, you've heard of him, right?
Yes.
25-year CIA agent Terry Jones?
I've heard the name.
Terry Jones served the CIA in Germany for 25 years. In some ways, really a great CIA agent. Terry Jones, quite impressive. Now, Terry Jones and his activities, the money for his activities are funneled through the Koch brothers into the Cato Foundation, into a group called PJ Media and the Tea Party, and then into Terry Jones. Now, it was his broadcast that was supposed to not the film that was released supposedly on YouTube. Putting something on YouTube with 10 billion other things isn't a release. It was a 24-hour telethon that cost $3 million, run by a church with 11 people in it, 6 of whom are addicted to crack. The other 5 are meth addicts. So I mean, it's not necessarily just that. It's that when you go behind Terry Jones and the front for the attack, you find PJ Media, and that's who handled his simulcast. And that PJ Media is affiliated with the Cato Foundation. And as of last June, the Cato Foundation was taken over by the Koch brothers, or Koch, or whatever they like to call them. It's Koch for me. And lo and behold, who are they friends and business partners with?
Who?
That answer would be that your friends out of
Melman and Mizell and Brownstein.
Oh yeah.
We're on overtime, and that's okay.
Well, Gordon,
I got a couple questions for you. Go ahead, Joanne.
Can I just a quick one? You put out a great article about the death ray. Can you talk just real briefly about the death ray and how it backs up?
We have 2 sets of weapons. Star Wars actually worked. 2 things came out of it. One is a pocket ray. It actually looks like a mobile phone that at the range of 25 feet will stop someone's heart. And it has been used for assassinations of dissidents within the U.S. Anytime anyone dies of a heart attack anymore, pretty much it's very easy to induce a heart attack. And we have absolutely solid, reliable evidence that this equipment exists. The other one is that there was a breakthrough in Tesla-based technology in '91, and that the U.S. and Russia have developed a Tesla-based energy cannon. And frankly, I know how most things work. I am an engineer. I work in the area of technology. When I had this explained to me by people from DARPA, which I do work on green energy programs, but explaining to me how an energy cannon works, it sounded like science fiction. But a Tesla-based energy cannon is powerful enough to erase an entire city.
And they have those orbiting?
Carried on a, say again?
They have those. How many of these they have orbiting?
We have them on orbital platforms. The whole idea of Star Wars, oh boy, you want to get into this one. Reagan was obsessed with planetary defense, and he may not have been stupid. Now, you know that Reagan went before the UN General Assembly and made a bizarre reference to what would happen if an alien power tried to invade the Earth, we would all work together.
Right.
And why would somebody say something like that? And then spend over $1 trillion on Star Wars, which all failed, by the way. No one ever reported what happened to anything. because nothing failed. It all worked. I can tell you one of the Star Wars side benefits. Like it's like the space program gave us Velcro. I mean, you got to we spent that. We went to the moon. We got Velcro. Well, if you were to look at let's say plasma fusion, there are a couple of things. Why does the U.S. spend billions of dollars a year researching applications for cold fusion? You'll find it in the defense budget, by the way. Peaceful applications of a technology that supposedly failed 2 decades ago, we spend billions of dollars on, unless somebody's lying to somebody. Another one is you might want to look into, in any way that writes this down, hydrogen boron dense plasma fusion. It is possible to build a device that looks a bit like a basketball with a cage around it, made out of copper, plasma core, a tungsten cage which operates a magnetic field that produces as a waste byproduct more electricity than a nuclear power plant and costs less than $70,000 to build. And we've had that technology for a very, very long time. That electricity has been free for decades.
Right.
Because of Tesla.
And do you think
because of Tesla, basically?
Oh, these are, and if you want to buy one, by the way, you can go to Lawrenceville Plasma Physics in New Jersey, where they make them.
Lawrence, what? For free energy machines?
Can you say it again?
Lawrenceville Plasma Physics. You can see what they look like. Iran has 6 of these right now operating. It's why they sell so much electricity. Iran sells electricity to probably half the Middle East because they produce massive amounts of electricity, and they do it using dense plasma fusion. They have better physicists than we do. Thank heavens they're actually not making nuclear weapons because they'd be very good at it. But they do invest in green energy, and they are producing vast amounts of green energy now, and which they sell on the grid to all of the countries in the Middle East. Which has angered a lot of people. But the U.S. government actually works with the government of Iran on energy projects. And the Senate voted 94-0 yesterday to put more sanctions against them, and we're in business with them. I mean, the world's kind of a funny place.
It's a
very interesting place.
Yeah, we don't. Now, as far as we get into the spaceship talk stuff.
Tell me about that.
It'll get you a big audience, but I can tell you that the people in the highest levels of government are strong believers in everything that's on the show X-Files.
Yeah,
they'll tell you it's all true, and that's not what we're here to discuss today. But all the people hiding in their basement, based on the Mayan calendar prediction of December 21st, that people within the U.S. government believe that we're going to be subject to an alien attack. I am not making a statement either way on that. I have been told that.
On what day? On what day? On that day?
December 21st.
21st.
Solstice. Yeah. Right off the Mayan calendar, and I'm just hoping the day goes through, none of this happens, and I can call these people up and say, dum-dums, I'm hoping that, because
that's what the
I don't want to see us all killed. Yeah.
What's your feeling on the aliens, Gordon?
Yeah.
Do you feel that I had a U.S. scientist, Ed Slade. I don't know whether you ever heard of him, but he was a personal friend, and he worked with the so-called aliens there at Papoose Lake. Not Groom Lake, but Papoose Lake. And he built their products, toys, took element 115, turned it into 118, volume, and all the other stuff. Mu metal.
This is one of these things I checked with Lee about. Yeah. In a blimp hangar in Britain, we have our first alien anti-gravity spaceship.
It's not. It doesn't really leave the atmosphere. It's the original TB, built in 1953 by Lockheed.
Right.
It's the size of a B-36. It's basically flying wing, triangular, no control surfaces. It uses a Lenco and Mercury anti-gravity system. Sits in a warehouse. The only power is a couple of jet engines off a B-36. But when they run the anti-gravity system, you can go in the blimp hangar and knock it around like an air hockey puck that weighs 500 tons. I had it fly over my car and stop 30 feet over my car for about 15 minutes. There's nothing. Lee, you should get Lee on. He can tell you about this. There's nothing worse than seeing a spaceship, sitting above your car, and noticing that it's not only painted OD green, but some of the rivets have fallen out of it, and the area where the paint has fallen off is got oil stains on it. Thinking, yeah, this is a spaceship, all right. My mother could have built this thing.
I'd like to put Lee on, but one time I talked to him here a few weeks ago, he said he was under a gag order.
We have photos. I think I've published a photo here. If you go on Veterans Today, it'll probably be under either my name or will be under the World News Tomorrow, which is our partner paper that we picked up from Murdoch, by the way. But we cracked the Google NASA satellite shielding and found parked in Western Australia a TB3, and we have photos of it. And of course, people are saying no, it's a magic antenna or whatever. We also have and I'll probably be publishing the analysis on this, but we have a full forensics. I have a full forensics lab close to the one the FBI has in capability, which is part of a business. We do forensics work for intelligence agencies, and which includes we do a lot of forensics work on rare earths and diamonds and things like this. It's primarily that area, but we did photo forensics work on over Groom Lake. We found a 1 kilometer in diameter flying disc. I would say I'd list it as a flying cake tray that shows itself to be 380 feet off the ground, and we have the equipment to do full forensic analysis, and if you will check on Veterans Today, you will find that I published a full National Intelligence, National Reconnaissance Office forensic analysis of a real UFO over Busan, Korea, and I have all of the forensics on it published. Cosmic security levels. Go ahead and do it. Now,
Gordon,
as far as aliens, if you want, just my opinion here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody who tells you that ET is a nice guy, I'd tell you to keep your distance.
Yep. Do you think that there possibility it's the fallen, what's described as the fallen angels?
No, I'm not a Christian. No.
Okay.
I don't do that. Are you familiar with Majestic?
Project?
MJ-12?
Yes.
Yeah, the MJ-12.
I was on MJ-12 for about 18 monmonths.
Okay. Well, I'm familiar with it.
Now, I will tell you that MJ-12 never meets, but it's what we call a reading group.
Right.
Okay. I spent 18 months on the MJ-12 reading group, and I've mentioned this before. That's many years ago. Over 35 years ago, and that the real document, which people talk about seeing, and I guarantee you they have not, is horrible.
want you to listen to an audio. Sometime it's on my site of Ed Slade. I'll send you a link. Matter of fact, I believe that you've done this a couple, 3 times, Blading.
Yes.
Glenn. And he's now dead. They killed him last October. But Ed was a scientist out there at Area 51, and he worked with the aliens. And, even Harry Rupp, the pilot for George Herbert Walker Bush, personal pilot, flew him into Groom Lake, or not Groom Lake, but Papoose
I'm changing
Lake.
telephones on you, by the way, because we're using one of those battery-operated guys.
Okay.
To an end. There we go.
But he flew George Bush in there several times, and Harry told me in his home in Aurora, Colorado, where he died, that one time when he flew into the Papoose Lake and the mountain opened up and he pulled the jet in there, a private jet, that he was told to stay out there while Daddy went off with the aliens, and that he could have access to their bathroom and pilot changing room. And he said he got out of his jet, and he started looking around, and of course he goes into the pilot changing room, and he sees all these. And
you would find little green men.
He saw little green men hanging up there on the along the wall. They're little pilot suits, as he described them, look flesh. And he said that one of the things he saw was a pyramid-looking thing standing there, and or sitting there, floating, not moving. And he went and put his hands underneath it, and he was looking to see if any wires were holding it up, kind of a blue-looking glass object, and that was one of their current little space toys, whatever it was.
Yeah, one of the scary things is all of those things are real, and I have access to, let's say, the gossip group there, and I'm not a whistleblower by any means, but what I am told is true by people who have that level of clearance and actively is when they talk about what they say they know, it is beyond my ability to accept or deal with.
Right, I understand you. I understand.
Yeah.
But if you were to summarize our mob organization, something you mentioned to me today, I don't know whether you want to mention it or whether
that the United States government is no more than mid-level organized crime.
Okay.
And that the members of ours, with a couple of exceptions, we only have a couple of members of the Senate and House that are actually mid-level dons. And you've already named one or more of them. There are a couple more.
Mm-hmm.
But it's run exactly. The United States is run by organized crime. And
if you were to name out the organized crime member head chiefs, who would they be?
One's a senator from Arizona.
John McCain.
Is he? Is that where he's from?
Yeah. Another one, Larry Mizell. Another one, Leonard Millman. Another one, Daddy Bush. Henry Kissinger. David Rockefeller.
Think South Carolina.
Think South Carolina.
Think of a gay senator from South Carolina.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the names of the ones down there. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yep.
Okay, so these are the main mob dons in this country then, pretty much. Council of 13.
Past president.
One of the odd things that had happened here, we were having, because of issues of, we'll save this for a phone call and not for public. There's stuff I probably can't say.
Okay.
Well, Gordon, I got one quick question. I know you got to go. You've been so kind to be with us so long, but about getting back to Jesse Ventura and his special on the death ray, what can you say? Have you looked at the work of Judy Wood and how she shows huge pieces of?
The issue with Judy is that Judy may not be wrong, but is the single most imperfect person on the planet. So I don't know. Judy's work could be correct, but I I do not trust Judy Wood 1 inch. And so what do I have here? I've got someone telling me things that are very likely true, and yet I've got a person who I don't trust.
I understand.
What do I tell you about that?
Yeah,
you know,
but we did have the death rate.
Not
What do you know about
inch.
the death rate?
But the death rate did hit the World
Jesse
Trade
Ventura has that one totally right.
Okay.
Yes.
And of course,
totally right.
And of course,
Okay.
Harp, he's got that right. Of course, moving the jet stream, being able to manipulate the weather with the old Arco boys.
Oh my God! We actually. This is great.
Sandy?
We actually own a weather machine. I've actually got one.
The original Russian weather machine.
No, we've got a weather machine. I mean, it's
Well, the original.
Yeah, we actually have it. It looks like it's made out of plumbing store. It actually works. I can make it rain on your house. If you think I'm kidding, just tell me when you want it to rain in your yard. I can do that.
I believe you.
Okay. Does it have to be local on site? You have to bring that device.
It's got a range of about 600 miles, and I will give you we'll talk. Stu will talk later.
Okay.
But we ran a test on this thing because I thought it was crazy. Okay. What we did is we chose a site outside Fort Huachuca, the U.S. Surveillance Command in southern Arizona, on a week when there were absolutely going to be no clouds at all. We made it rain 7 days in a row.
Interesting.
I'm just kidding, guys, but people who are down there will know this. And it's a question of, I was going to go somewhere, but at least I didn't have to water my lawn, that kind of thing. But 7 days in a row, and this thing tows behind a car, and it looks like material handling equipment. It's a microwave system. The range is between 600 and 700 miles, and it alters the jet stream and can, I don't know if you have. The problem is that, and this is first of all not that expensive to build. It's not that complicated. It absolutely works. My concern is that if I can have one of these things, and I have one of my assistants actually has physical possession of this thing. Are people using this and causing all these crop failures? I'm here in Ohio. We had a horrible crop failure this last year.
Yes,
we lost soybeans, we lost corn, and I was given the opportunity here, Gordon. They want financing to build these things, and I'm thinking, I do not understand the repercussions here of manipulating weather. I ain't that smart, all right? And having something that does this, I look on not as an asset but a liability. If I can call in and say, make it rain in Albuquerque, for instance, and they do it, it'll rain in Albuquerque. Is that making it not rain somewhere else?
Right.
And, I don't have that modeling capability, and I notice people that control this technology don't seem to have any consideration for how this would affect things. So my suggestion was to show funding for this, and
don't allow it to happen, right?
Yeah,
and in the wrong hands, which it is, we got a problem.
And I'm under the impression that I believe there's a strong capability that people had misused a technology of this kind in a capricious manner and had caused severe crop problems in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And and the device, I can tell you, it's far less complicated than you would imagine. It contains no magical physics. It doesn't use huge amounts of power.
Is it anything to do with Wilhelm Reich or Orgon?
I'm probably going to stop talking about this because this is
totally real. And see, I arrived thinking, first of all, the people are crazy, and then they said, well, we'll go ahead and do it. And then I figured, well, I'll just pick the driest place I can, the driest period where I've got someone of, that's extremely reliable, and let's make it rain on his house, and I'll do it day after day, and then have him call me, and it's God, and then the other, 2 words to go with it, Gordy, can you please stop it raining on my house?
I mean, how targeted are we talking? Are we talking about just like dedicated just to that house or to that city?
I'm saying the machine will fit in your backyard.
And,
the
target, how precise could be the target?
Oh no, we're talking a normal rainstorm, and I would really like to know how, in the name of heavens, you can where you don't have a cloud formation, you can move or create a cloud formation 600 miles away, targeting an area, causing an accumulation of clouds and stimulating rainfall. There are lots of technologies. The problem we have here is that we learned this some time ago, is that the problems of unified field theory were solved long ago. General relativity was debunked longer ago than we care to admit. And so when you see Jesse Ventura talking about death rays, my scientific education, when I sit down with guys from Livermore Labs or from DARPA, I start feeling like a moron now, because everything that I was talked about, the laws of preservation of matter and energy, are all from. When you look at the work of Tesla and what he had accomplished, and Tesla's theories on free energy, and this is the area that Judy Wood talks about. I would just like to have the people I deal with be more communicative, reasonable, and I'd like to say reality-based. But one of the problems with Ventura, is he's got to do TV. But right. Ventura has done Ventura's work on the Pentagon from 2 years ago was. I take his energy weapon and Pentagon work as above reproach. Other things I could possibly leave alone. Oh heavens! I look at some of the stuff Alex Jones does. Where he goes outside an IMF or an ICE facility, and there are kids playing there, and he calls it a FEMA camp. And there's 6 people in there. They're waiting deportation, and we have too many crazy people around us, and yet we have a level of science that goes well beyond what we admit. And the issue behind this is Malthusian, that if all of the weather and free energy and other things that we discuss were applied, world population would be expanded tremendously and would eventually end up in a massive worldwide war like out of Orwell. And some of the rationale for withholding the technologies that should make our lives a dream is that we don't have the social engineering to apply their application. And when you add to that the greed we have from selling oil, coal, and nuclear fuel that should be worthless,
right.
That makes that decision even easier.
Well, I think that's I think you're right. That's what they think. But I think if we had free energy and we could green the deserts, this world could support a lot more people.
We've had free energy since 1970. I was told 77. I've had that corrected. I know at least by 77 people say before, and then I have seen what you would call free energy capable projects that were totally functional between 91 and 93 that should have been applied.
Okay, when do you think the free energy will be available to American people, and what will break free this information?
Never. Never.
It's because of profit and taxation.
But will it be able to be leaked out, and will they be able to get through the blockade?
Do you know that we have alien technology in our automobiles?
Which one?
Computers.
What is it?
Computers.
Oh.
Or the circuits.
We have an anti-gravity. We have a patent for an anti-gravity shock absorber for cars.
Yeah, but none of this stuff ever comes out. When's all the
it's
good
already
stuff?
out. It's already out.
Just in what, special military vehicles, or just things that we never see?
No. I got one in my garage.
You've got anti-gravity.
Just a normal $125,000, V8 sedan that happens to have a attitude correction system that is involved in manipulating weight using technology that comes from elsewhere, and it's patented by an automobile company.
And Cadillac, I think, does the same thing, don't they?
Yeah, it's just called black boxed. We have developed. We have been operating on. We've been operating on alien technologies for a very long time. If you were to go back to the 1960s, 1956, Bell Labs developed the transistor. Within 10 years, we had an integrated circuit that put 10,000 transistors on a fingernail. Please show me how we developed that, because I don't see the linear signs of development, and that's the world I worked in.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see anybody working on those projects. I don't know where this stuff came from. It had to come out of the maintenance department in a basement. Because nobody made it that I know of. And I saw things developed at Texas Instruments. Are they still even around now?
I'm not sure whether they are or not. I'm not sure.
But
Gordon, what about Mars though? Do we really have a base there, or have people gone there, as far as you know?
Oh, I had that thing that went on at the Vancouver 9/11 hearings with Jim Fetzer. I am not read in on anything like that. And you have to realize when people tell you things, people can tell you a lot of things just to make you look like an idiot. There's always that, and there's a reason to make people look like an idiot. Which we can do on our own. If you don't take yourself too seriously, you'll never look like an idiot. There's that.
That's exactly
there's always that defense. They never get past that one.
John Lair, we've had him on, and I've known John for years. You know John?
I believe there's something. I believe that there is. I do know this. Okay, I can say for sure that we have spacecraft that once they leave the atmosphere, that can pass the moon in less than 2 minutes and pass Mars in less than 12 hours.
Wow!
And
can they go outside our solar? How they can go to another star system?
I have not seen that technology. I do know we have things that approach light speed. I am not read on anything that exceeds light speed. And these things are huge.
You're talking bigger than the USS
Figure triangle,
Enterprise?
600 meters across, equilateral triangle.
Mm-hmm.
I have photographs of these things. I have real photographs up.
Are you familiar, since we're talking all this technology, I don't know whether we should go there, but they've got the new plane, that propulsion system. Took its little debut, should we say, around the world here about 4 years ago, and the Air Force flew it, and I think it went all around the planet and went over China before they could even get a jet off the ground that was already out of its airspace.
Well, the issue with the issue with that is the
diamond semiconductor skin and using a nanotechnology. They had to be able to develop 6-micron diamonds that had semiconductor properties in order to put this into production. And that's been the issue, is going into production with that. And I probably shouldn't talk more about that either. I've said enough there to get you more attention than you need or want.
Yeah, I understand totally.
You guys should let me go and finish this off.
Yeah, would you like to say anything at the end? Just whatever you want to say.
Nope,
You've been very kind.
I don't need to. I've put my foot in it enough.
Gordon, I want to thank you
so
very much for coming on with us. And believe me, this will go viral. We're going to make this go viral.
Oh, yeah, I really need that. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
okay, Gordon. I'll be in touch with you. Thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Good night.
All right. Wow. That was incredible. That's definitely going to go viral. Fantastic show. Thanks so much for see, he was only going to go an hour, so I guess because Stu and him got along so really well, he just wanted to go for it, and he was very kind, and we really appreciate that. All right, well, that's all we got tonight. Incredible show. Definitely get it around as soon as you can, and until next time, we'll see you soon.